Hello, good day everyone. In this episode of BSLIVE, I'm gonna be comparing Armor Paint and Blender in terms on texture painting and how we can actually deal with things like stamping, cutout, or alpha. In this case, I have two different flowers, and I want to be stamping them into this guy, into just like 3D painting. So instead of just normal brush, I want to stamp this flower. Okay, with Armor Paint, they actually did a really well done job. So if I bring this into Armor Paint, just drag and drop it. So we have the two flowers here. If I want to assign it as a brush, this is what we do. So color and alpha. You can see this material, and this is it's almost like live and real time, and it's almost interactive. Okay, by default you're actually gonna be getting this because what happened is Armor Paint is applying it unprojected into the UV of this model. But if you want to do stamping, you have to change the tool into Decal, and so we have this picture of flower and we can stamp it. And what I really like with Armor Paint is that we can easily change the roughness and metalness on the fly. So it's almost like the brush material itself is live, and you can change it on the fly. You can actually multiply the color with the image as well, and you can create another material, drag and drop new flower, and there you go. It's very easy and fast. However, Armor Paint is actually quite interesting because it's currently version 0.8, but it's always been being developed, and the brush actually have something missing. For example, that if you start to paint the flower, you can see there's something quite weird with the alpha there. I was expecting the flower to look like this when I paint it, but that's Armor Paint. But I do really like how we can do this. And then if you switch to the brush, you can see we actually have lazy brush, and you can actually paint slowly. Okay, lazy step is actually give you gap, I think. Not really. Anyway, it's quite interesting, Armor Paint. Compare it to Blender. Blender is actually really quite interesting as well, the way it works. So normally you can switch from the default layout into texture paint, and yeah, let's actually do that. Let's actually switch the layout. So we have this mode, and the properties of the tool is actually here, and we have this pink box, of course, because we have to add the material. Which one? What do we want to texture? Base color, roughness, metallic. So unlike the Armor Paint, we are kind of painting it separately. So we paint metallic, roughness separately. If you are using something like BPainter, you can paint them at the same time. So that's the only difference, really. And yeah, so I create a new texture, and I want to start painting using the texture, right? Okay, so the way we do that is we want to use the stamping. So we go down. We have this texture and texture mask. So I create new on the texture, and we have blank, right? And then we switch to this guy, and we pick our flower. So let's start with the sunflower and start painting. You can see, okay, it's painting something. It's painting the flower like with its alpha, right? Why is it black? Because we are using black color ink. But if you make it white, 100% white, we actually have the sunflower. So it's that easy actually, and we can start painting. You can see this one is following the alpha, and if you notice the flower is kind of rotating as well by default. That's actually kind of nice. And we actually have option here to turn on and off the alpha if we see. Okay, so that's interesting. So we go back to our brush tool and let's have a look. This is actually from BPainter, but the rest of them is the default Blender. The mapping is viewing plane, alright. Angle, by default angle is 90, and it has random on. You can actually turn on rake. So rake actually follow the brush directions. Sometimes you want that. You can have both rake and also random. So that's really quite neat. Let's save this as flower brush. And then, so we can paint with the flower, that's nice. What else we can do? View plane, tile, 3D, random. Random, okay, let's see. Okay, this is actually, you better, I think you just keep in the viewing plane, but what you want to change perhaps is the stroke. By default it's space. We can change it to dot. Dot, give you that, and dot you can increase the jitter, so it's like stamping the flower. So that's really quite nice. And we have control over the size. We don't have with this one. We can actually have drag dot. Drag dot. Can we enlarge it? Actually the zoom in, zoom out is actually interesting. Line. But I'm just gonna keep it on space for now. So that's a nice, and if we go to object mode, let's save this. And I want to subdivide this, control 3, and then say it's shade smooth. You can see this weird gap. Smooth, keep corners, actually sharp, actually keep this. To fix that issue, we make it sharp. That's interesting. All right, so anyway, so let's go back to texture painting. We have two different flower, right? How do we quickly interchange the flower? We can do that quite easily. There are two methods. You can use a different texture, but you can actually use this movie or image sequence instead of single image. So the name of the flower, so sunflower, good. I should have used this guy, but alright. I'm gonna duplicate the sunflower and name this one flower 02.png. Flower 1 and flower 2. So we have sequence. So I'm gonna make a new texture, new, and use image and then select our flower. And I will specify we actually have sequence of image and we have 2 frame. Turn on cyclic, turn on auto refresh. So if we use the arrow key to switch the frame, we're gonna have 2 different flower. Yeah, this is actually quite interesting, and not many Blender artists know this. You can change this while you're in this mode, in this texture mode. So it's almost like live, like a kind of like a game environment. It's almost like Armor Paint. This is live on the fly. If you switch back to this guy over here and start painting, and you change the frame number, you cannot have that. So you have to have this and the other one. So maybe it's a good idea just pin this and then switch to the tool. So now you can see this still work because this guy is changing on the fly. So ideally, I think if we switch to full screen, and so in this mode you cannot have it, you cannot have that switching brush. And same here, actually, yep, you cannot have it. I think maybe there's a way with Python or using nodes to be able to switch this and update the texture like on the fly. So this is, I found very interesting. You can have more than 2 flower image as well. So you can have hundreds maybe. You can use movie frames as a brush. Providing the alpha, it's gonna be quite interesting. And then, okay, this have to stay there. So this is the tool panel. We don't need to see the outliner actually. Oh, it's okay, just keep it there. So what else can I show you with the tool here? You can change the color. So the flower, because flower can, if it's mixing the flower color, it's kind of like tinting the texture. So this is also pretty interesting. And on top of this, if you actually look at the color palette, so we have this one that's changing. I'm gonna show you really quickly one more trick, slightly interesting. So I'm changing this color. You can see it's a unified paint setting color, and there's this secondary color, and we actually have another one up here. Okay, color and secondary color. Okay, 2 colors. And I want to be changing the color, right? This is using Python. Let's look at the context scene tool settings. All right. Let's copy this. And then paste it into text editor so it doesn't go away. Now I will open SVerchok nodes. So SVerchok is, you already know, it's the add-on. It's another add-on. SVerchok has a really interesting way to deal with anything in the scene. I will use object ID selector node. I'm gonna select the scene. Okay. And let's actually find this tool setting, unified paints, blah blah blah. Okay. Object ID set. So I grab the scenes. I'm gonna grab the tool settings, and I will grab the unified paint settings, and I will select the color, and then I will use a node called color in, plug this in. Now you can see the color up there is changing. It's actually being controlled by this guy over here. So if we are using frame, or actually use a random number, plug this into the hue, for example, set this to float, size 1, float 0 to 1, and randomize the color, you can see it's changing the color. Okay. So I think this is another way. So you can use Python, of course, for this and set up the code, but you can actually use this node. It's quite powerful, and you can just hide this guy now. So if I'm changing the frame, you can see it's changing the color of the flower, and it's also changing the texture of the image brush. for 3D painting. So it's actually really quite powerful method. So if you move this ball side, if you use the monkey head, subdivisions, shade smooth, okay. Now we switch back to texture painting. Of course it is pink again. So we need to assign a material to the base color, for example, apply. And we want to start painting Suzanne. You probably want to turn on symmetry as well with Suzanne. Now it's we can actually continue painting with this very strange brush setup. I believe with this method you can go full screen totally and change the color that way. So the color is changing, you can see, but the texture, the color is not. I mean the image texture is staying at sunflower, but the color is changing. If I actually run the time, the playback, running the playback is the color is changing on the fly while we are painting. So this is some very strange way to work, but it's there. This feature is actually part of Blender, so it's very interesting. So if you are actually changing the texture using SVerchok, you can have the image texture changing while in full screen mode. Currently it's only the color that's changing. Okay, so it's changing the hue every time. Okay, so hopefully you like this this interesting method. Hopefully you find this useful. Let me know if you have anything to add. I think this is really quite powerful method to get quite interesting texture. Again, with Blender, when you're painting, you're only painting in one slot unless you switch to others like metallic or roughness. Let's say I switch to metallic and then painting. This is only painting the metal, the metalness. And we need to switch to other rendering to see how the metalness is being affected. Okay, so yeah, because behind the scene you also, you already know you have the shader, of course, and this is where our texture is being plugged in. So you can see this is what we painted, metallic and also the base color. For people with non-3D background, normally they will be slightly surprised by this, because suddenly they have to deal with all this roughness, metalness, etc. And sometimes they actually prefer it just, okay, I just want to paint with wood, for example, wood material, and just painting the wood, etc. Of course, you can do that as well in Blender by using mask, and you actually have multiple material that's later being blended. But yeah, I think this could be surprising for non-3D artists, but still it's something that you have to know behind the scenes. So it's like with armor paint, it's of course it's much easier, but this is also important. This is the materials that made up what you see over here. So if you want to have like wood, metal, plastic material that's blending together like layers, behind the scenes it's actually can be quite complex. If you actually have an add-on called BPainter, I actually have BPainter over here. BPainter actually can mix multiple PBR materials in Blender. Slightly more complicated, but BPainter make it much easier because you can have layers as well, and masking with armor paint is slightly easier, but still, anyways, yeah, something to keep in mind. So anyway, so hopefully you find this useful again, and I'll see you next time. Bye.